Hello, my friends. This is Kevork Almasian, and you are watching Syriana Analysis. Today, I have a special guest for you, Professor Tim Anderson. He is a senior lecturer at Sydney University, and he actually visited North Korea once. And also, he has an important book, The Dirty War on Syria. I will put all the links in the description below. I wanted to host him especially for this episode because Kim Jong-un and President Trump, they have met in Singapore and they agreed, they have reached into certain agreements about the nuclear program of North Korea and other geopolitical related issues. But I will give the floor to Professor Anderson. For starters, I want him to explain what's the content of this agreement, because a lot has been said in the last couple of hours in the media. Professor Anderson, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. And please, the floor is yours for Syriana Analysis viewers. They are interested to know what's the content of this agreement.
Yes, thank you, Kevork. I did follow it because, as you say, I was in Korea last year, North Korea, and I'm going back next month. So I have been following it closely. And I've also looked at the responses from people around the world, and it's a very polarized response. I think that really it's quite an important breakthrough. It was basically initiated by North Korea when they began their diplomatic offensive earlier this year. Remember that there was a very high level of tension maybe 6 months ago. And then the Olympics gave a chance for a breakthrough between the North and the South without talking to the US. And then Trump came in. Obviously, Trump has had his own idea to get some PR kudos out of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's done it. And I think in many respects, we have to give credit to both sides here, because, of course, it's much better that there's a healthy, respectful discussion going on than war games. The war games have been threatening the North Koreans for a very long time. One thing that was driven home to me when I was in North Korea last year is that the North Korea has been at war for 100 years. They fought the Japanese Empire, they fought the US. That war 65 years ago was a terrible war, and no one in North Korea forgets it, and they've commemorated it enormously. The US threw everything at them except nuclear weapons. They were on the point of throwing nuclear weapons. So they were traumatized, but they also rebuilt their society. And fast forward to recent times, they've been very tough diplomatically, the North Koreans, compared to other countries. They don't respect really what happened in Libya and Iraq. I mean, from the point of view of Libya and Iraq, they believe that too many concessions were made. So I don't think that people have to worry on one side that they're being weak with the US here. But I think it's very important that when we come to the agreement, the important thing is that they are talking. There is respectful language. That's very important. You know, if people keep abusing the other side, let's say the way that the Western media talks about North Korea, it makes it very difficult to make any sort of advance, you know. Now, the agreement seems to me to be just a framework one at this stage. It doesn't have a lot of specific content, but remember again, the initiative was taken by North Korea, first by developing nuclear weapons, second by offering to remove them. And I think it's fair to say that we wouldn't have seen the talks between Trump and Kim had North Korea not developed their nuclear weapons. Now they have a bargaining chip effectively.
Professor, do you agree? So do you agree with the analysis that says Kim Jong-un and his father, they were developing nuclear weapons, not to use them, of course, and not only for deterrent reasons, but also because he wanted to use this weapon as a bargaining chip, because he already has a long-range missiles, I mean, conventional weapons, and he has a military capability to deter the American forces surrounding North Korea, even without this WMD.
I think that's right. But of course, the North Korea cannot credibly attack the US. It's simply not possible, not realistic, and they would be destroyed if they attacked the US in some part. Let's say Guam, for example. You know, there would be no point in doing that. But they are a deterrent, and they have forced the talks to get to this stage already. One thing concrete that's happened is that Trump has called off some imminent war games that were deferred after the talks began between the North and the South. that's an advance. We have to recognize that's an advance. The fact that they're talking with respect is an advance. I've seen this in other situations. For example, the Cubans and the Australians started talking 8 years ago, and they didn't achieve all things they were going to achieve, but there is a respectful relationship. They have done some small things. A lot of the tension is gone, and some new possibilities are opened. I mean, remember, the dynamic behind Korea is precisely the fact that the North and the South are now talking with a lot of goodwill. And indeed, even the popular responses on both sides of the border have been very good. There was a poll which was released in Time magazine recently that showed that 80% of the South Koreans trusted Kim Jong-un. That's important. And in many respects, the US is simply a foreign body that's been in Korea maintaining this conflict for so long. So the more that you have goodwill, and perhaps the hardliners in the South thinking that they have now permission from the US to talk together, that's important. It's not spelt out in the agreement in Singapore yesterday, but the goodwill from Trump allows greater advances now between the North and the South. I think that's important too.
But Professor Anderson, a lot of people also questioning the credibility of the United States in regards to similar agreement, and especially that when the administrations change, maybe a new president comes and he would cancel this agreement or try to change it the same way now Donald Trump is trying to do with Iran. Of course, he canceled the P5+1 agreement with Iran, but deep inside, I mean, I know, or a lot of people are saying that Trump's cancellation of this deal is to improve the conditions of this agreement with Iran in the interest of the United States. So why should we trust now the administration of Donald Trump to make such an agreement with North Korea, and then maybe another president comes and he cancels it, or he tries to change the agreement with North Korea?
No, I don't think it's a question of trusting Trump. And I think people's perceptions are also influenced by the fact that a lot of people don't like Trump, and for lots of different reasons. But I think we should put that out of their minds. It's not a question of trusting Trump here, because the North Koreans have not really surrendered anything here so far. In the case of the Iran agreement, it was a bad agreement for Iran to start with. But remember, on the other side, there was not just the US, but the Europeans and China and Russia. There was a unique opportunity the US had to pressure Iran to really compromise its sovereignty by allowing foreigners to come and carry out surveillance on their whole nuclear program. That was a very different sort of deal. In this case, the Koreans are giving up anything except what they'd done before. They destroyed a test site. They haven't destroyed any of their missiles, haven't destroyed any of their weapons, but they've said they've done enough testing. So they put a pause there. There was an element of goodwill there, and Trump unilaterally stopped the war games. Now, if Trump himself decides to restart the tension, Trump has to justify it, doesn't he? The North Koreans can say that they've made certain moves, and I think that's important for other relationships too. Remember, North Korea has had a tenuous relationship with China and Russia. They haven't had the support that they had in the past, for example. But I suspect that the Chinese premier, in the last two talks that Kim Jong-un had with him, was saying he wanted to see some sort of effort to normalize with the US. And I think North Korea has met that, and they'll get kudos from it, from Russia and from China, and also from South Korea. So I think they've got that benefit already without really giving up anything, except what, as I said, the test facilities they destroyed. So I don't think the question of trust with Trump is not really there yet, because it's not as if the US, of course, has been talking in very unilateral terms, as is their want. They want North Korea to dismantle all its weapons, and I think Bolton even said send them over to the US so that they can destroy them themselves. Nothing like that's happened, and the North Koreans reacted against that. The North Koreans have always said, we want to denuclearize the whole peninsula. That means the US removing its nuclear weapons from the peninsula as well as their own side.
That's true. But taking from what you said, Professor Anderson, you mentioned Russia and you mentioned China. Do these two countries have a role in this agreement between the United States and North Korea, or they were excluded from this agreement that happened only yesterday?
They're not involved at the moment, but they're involved implicitly, because really they're the two big powers that share a border with North Korea. they're the potential trade partners. Well, they are the trade partners. There is trade going on despite the US unilateral sanctions there. There are Security Council sanctions too, which undoubtedly North Korea wants to get rid of, and they'll be important for that purpose. So, with China, it's the major potential commercial partner. With Russia, it's a potential security partner too. So, in many respects, this is a show, which has been important for Korea's relationships with China, Russia, and, as I said, South Korea. Don't leave that out of the equation, because if there are good relationships between North Korea and South Korea, the pretext that the US has for being in the Korean Peninsula diminishes very quickly. And in terms of China, the logic that really keeps the US in Korea at all, if there's good relationships between the North and the South, is the fact that they want a base, they want a toehold there as part of their encirclement of China. So strategically, the big picture there is the US trying to contain in some sort of way or encircle China. So China has an interest for that reason, apart from the Korea in itself.
Professor Anderson, in a few words, my last question is, do you expect the removal of sanctions against North Korea or some sort of prosperity and development in the Korean Peninsula, especially in the northern part after this agreement? I mean, do you think the Americans will allow North Koreans to move in a better economical environment in the region, or there will be still some restrictions?
Well, Trump hasn't changed anything in relation to the US sanctions there, but I think that strategically there's a move behind that, which is more important, and this is the case with Iran also, that whatever the US does is of less importance these days because of the integration going on between Asia and Europe. And so if North Korea can get rid of those international sanctions from the Security Council and have develop a better relationship with Russia and China in particular, that's the important step. The important step is not so much the US. The US is becoming a secondary player these days in terms of economic sanctions. I mean, I think Iran, for example, is going to learn to live with unilateral US sanctions, so long as it can develop its economic relations and normalize its relations with the rest of the world, basically. And I think Korea is looking in that direction also.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Anderson, I really appreciate your great insights in this issue. It was very good to have you on Syriana Analysis, and hopefully we'll have you soon more and more on my channel. And I will ask my friends if they are interested to read your amazing book. I will put all the links in the description below. It has been published and translated to 7 languages, I believe, The Dirty War on Syria.
10 languages. 10 languages now.
10 languages, guys. I will put the links of Amazon and elsewhere in the description below, and you can take a look of it. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you, Prof. Nice to talk with you again.